Oh, hang on. We're going to have to take this call. Wait there. Pause it a minute. Hello?
No, I'm going to leave the call.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I was up on the road over the common at Eglwys Silan earlier between Ponty and Caerphilly, and there's quite a lot of loose cattle on the road.
Oh!
That were
That's not what I was expecting.
Scattering amongst the cars and quite a few walkers up there.
South Wales is like a
maybe
ghetto.
about 2 hours ago now.
Who's she talking to? The First Minister?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I'm not sure who the farmer is up there, but I just wanted to obviously, when it's dark, they're going to be a lot more easy to hit with a car, I would have thought.
So if you want to hit one, go up there now.
Well, it's the road that goes across Eglwys Silan Common, so it's a single track road with no lighting on it.
Like most roads in Wales.
Do you want me to spell Eglwys Silan? It's John Jon, and it's Pountney Pountney. All right then, thank you. Bye bye. All right.
Good community work.
Yeah,
Good
well
community
done.
work, John.
Loads of I went up earlier, and it's a very narrow single track road up over the mountain, and there was loads of stray cattle out, and they were like bolting in front of cars and stuff. A woman walking was shitting herself because the heifers were coming really, really close to her, and they're very, they're quite docile and very inquisitive. But if one of them takes a fright and kicks you, you're in khaki. I remember when my dad got kicked by a cow, and the bruise on his leg was literally pitch black. Yeah, it's a real. It's like being kicked by a donkey or something.
Well, being kicked by any kind of animals really is no laughing, because Johnny Cash almost died, didn't he? When he got kicked by that ostrich. Yes, when he got kicked by an ostrich.
So that's the title sequence done, anyway.
Britain, an ancient kingdom with legends of violence, cruelty, and torment in its blood. Join your hosts, Ross, John, and James, as they bravely tread where few would dare. Witness their journey into the horrific history of British horror. They are the General Witchfinders.
Ladies and gentlemen, goblins and ghouls, welcome back to the 12th episode of the General Witchfinders podcast. I'm James in Bournemouth on the south coast of England.
I'm John Pountney in South Wales, which is in the south of Wales.
And I'm Ross in Dorchester in southern England. And today's episode, we are going to cover Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
I have seen the future of horror. His name is Clive Barker. Hellraiser, beyond any terror you have imagined. A nightmare. No. Unlike anything you have witnessed, is born. Because within these walls, the unholy is unleashed. Hellraiser, a film by Clive Barker.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Nice. Hellraiser is a 1987 British supernatural horror film written and directed by Clive Barker, based on his 1986
Who should have known better?
based on his 1986 novella, The Hellbound Heart. The film marked Barker's directorial debut. Its plot involves a mystical puzzle box which summons the Cenobites, a religious sect in hell known as the Order of the Gash.
Order of what? The Gash?
Yes!
You're joking.
No!
Oh,
Fuck's sake. Describing themselves as explorers in the further regions of experience and granting sadomasochistic pleasures to those who call upon them. The leader of the Cenobites is portrayed by Doug Bradley and identified in the sequels as Pinhead. Filmed in late 1986, Barker originally wanted the electronic music group Coil to perform the music for the film, but on insistence from producers, the film was rescored by Christopher Young. Some of Coil's themes were reworked by Young into the final score. Since its release in September 1987, the film has divided critics, but generally received praise. Initial reviews ranged from Melody Maker calling it the greatest horror film made in Britain
by someone who's never
watched a horror film. To Roger Ebert decrying its bankruptcy of imagination.
Yep.
It was followed by 9 sequels. The first 7 of which featured Bradley reprising his role as Pinhead. A remake is currently in the works.
Oh my God. Christ.
So I think you can tell from the reaction so far that how this is going to go down. But let's maybe just go through this.
Right.
This is the first one we watched in a little while, guys. And I thought
rather
than sticking within the 2 or 3 years around 1971, we might move into the 1980s. So we went to Hellraiser. So Hellraiser was a film which had a lot of mystique around it when I was growing up, and it was one of those films that I was really quite nervous about watching.
Understand.
It was always in Starburst, like stills of it.
Yes.
Were always in Starburst magazine.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah. And I can remember one time when my parents had gone out, we had a pirate version of this on the shelf, and I decided to watch it.
Okay.
I got a little way in, and I got so freaked out by it. And
really?
And felt so like, this is something which I shouldn't be watching. I must have been 12, something like that. I was feeling like this is so wrong. I need to turn this off. And I didn't watch it again until probably in my 30s.
Okay.
So I've seen it a couple of times.
Which parts freaked you out as a young boy?
It was the bit when the sort of like the body sort of crawls across the floor.
Oh.
Yes.
Had you seen the thing at that point, or the fly?
I think what got me was that it was a British film. It was in a British house, and it felt a lot more at that point. And we can talk about how I feel about it as an adult, but as a child, it felt really
close to home,
immediate. Yeah, but also. And I think, and it's interesting that when the description, which you probably know, I always steal the descriptions off Wikipedia and fiddle around.
Correct. Yes.
They don't talk about anything other than the Cenobites in that. And the main story is basically about
very little to do with them.
Anything to do with them. And it's all about like sex and sort of the darker side of sex. And that all felt just, and James is going to laugh at this, but with like Fred West and all that kind of stuff.
It always comes back to Fred West.
There's no Austin 1100 in this film, is there?
No, but I felt like that's
kind
Clockwise.
Of thing.
I was always quite scared.
Did you stop watching Clockwise as well? Because it's the same car as Fred West.
I think growing up, like reading the news of the world, and just being frightened of like awful things people do to have sex with people. It just like it just was like I don't like this, and turn it off.
The reverse angle of this is that I thought that it looked like a mixture of the Living Daylights crossed with a 1980s Queen video.
Because I thought at 1 minute I've written down that at one point it turns into the Wild Boys video by Duran Duran. It's got that vibe to it. It's
got a really horrid. The lighting is terrible.
And it has a starburst filter on it all the time, didn't it?
Yes. Right.
The something about the quality of the film stock that they use really reminds me of the part in The Living Daylights when a house is attacked with grenades disguised as milk bottles.
Yes.
There's something really similar to that scene. And then I did think when you've got these blue lights coming in, pulsating through some broken shutters, that we were going to see Freddie Mercury jump in with with a waistcoat on, with cats and a pair of massive trainers with some bananas on his head. And to be honest, that would
time for no monkey business.
That would have improved the film by about 100%, to be honest, for me.
Now, before we get into it, like part of this, and I think the allure of this for people is, of course, Clive Barker himself. This is all like a big S&M thing, isn't it? Right? And like, and they say throughout, like, we explore the line between pleasure and pain. And now I'm just going to point out, I don't mind saying this on a public podcast. I don't like any physical pain whatsoever. I'm a massive natural coward anyway, and I definitely don't like any physical pain in my sexy time. Right? So this whole thing of, but it's a fine line between, that hurts, but you like it, don't you? The answer is always, no, I fucking don't. Ow! Stop that. Leave my nipples alone.
Unless it's an Alsatian biting your balls.
Oh, no, and you know full well that's, that was terrifying as well for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, I don't get this whole, their torture is, but there's something a bit sexy about it. No, there's nothing sexy about it.
No.
But I do feel like that, and it's a lot of this sort of, and when we talk like with the James Herbert stuff, I feel like, and also when all the Soho stuff in Deathline, I feel like sex was so much more kind of hidden and mysterious and a little bit scary and frightening and stuff before we had the internet, where you can see everything and you go, oh, actually, all that kind of stuff. You can look at it and it's like, looks a bit stupid. It's for me anyway. And I think like the mystique and the fear and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, well, it's just someone wearing some PVC or something. And
for me, this was reminding me very much of going to art college in the 1990s.
Yes.
Boys with long hair, Fear Factory t-shirts on. Yeah. Like, they'd all stand, don't talk to girls ever. They're terrified of girls. They're all into films like this.
Yeah.
Ross, this reminded me of Dean Edwards, who we went to college with. I can imagine
with his snake.
I remember him. I remember meeting him.
Yeah. Someone who lives in a flat with a boa constrictor in a fish tank.
Yeah.
They've got a girlfriend called Marie, who thinks she might be a vampire. But actually she works for like the DSS.
It's like we used to go to the hot house and they would be playing like fist fuck and have like
some 9 Inch Nails on
there. With an actual slide carousel going around, like showing like people in S&M stuff and thinking it's really
inevitably
edgy.
always that still of that Hanoi sergeant executing that guy in Vietnam. That was always a go-to for those people.
So edgy. Yeah. And they want you to go and play Masquerade the Vampire roleplay game with them.
And I don't know where those people are anymore. I don't know if there's still such a youth subculture as
I saw a vampire goth today over in Bridport when we was going.
Maybe it's not a Welsh thing. I don't know if it's more of an English thing. I don't see anyone that looks like this anymore, to be honest.
But yeah, I think that there was a lot of fear or mystique. It's the same with like all the Geiger stuff as well.
Yeah.
Oh look, it's a leather cock.
I think you're right though, Ross, that there's some kind of relationship between the sexual world and horror. That whole thing of the hidden, the forbidden, the taboo. I think you're onto something there. But like with this film, I didn't buy into the whole kind of, oh, look, dark and sexy. I was just a bit weird.
Yeah.
Well, isn't the thing, like, because none of the people in it are attractive, really, except for the young daughter. The main woman is not remotely attractive and her hair is disgusting.
But they make out to you. So let's go, I'll come to that in a minute. Yeah. So the film starts with, a guy buying this mysterious puzzle box, and I thought it looked there, and it was like, well, this looks a bit like Indiana Jones meets The Exorcist
But also, he was buying it off of a man who was the worst dubbed person in history.
There's so much dubbing in this film.
That part is like a very budget Indiana Jones, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, straight away.
I watched the commentary and he said that they had such a small bit of a set there. And you can see it's a back projection, like for the outside. They said if you move the camera, you could see around the outside bit. And so he gets the box, and then you see him, hung upside down and having the Cenobites.
Well, hold on. First of all, Rossi, I should point out as well that it takes him a very long time to find an extremely obvious button in this box. It's right in the middle. I'm like, it's the big round bit in the middle. Yeah. And he presses it and it opens up. And I've just written down that Rubik's Cube does have a lot to answer for in this film. There's a big kind of...
Yeah.
And do you remember, it wasn't Rubik's Cube. What was the one with the rings, guys?
Yeah, I have that.
What was that?
Within a few hours, it fell to pieces and it was held together with nylon string.
Yeah.
And it went in the bin. My auntie Anne.
So he opens up the box, gets all ripped, his latex skin gets ripped apart by fish hooks.
Oh, yes.
Terrible.
Yes.
And then
really badly applied foundation over what just looks like copy decks, which is what I used to do.
But then we cut to the couple moving into the house. You got to
put now just a brief pause there, because this was the one shot, and I had to go back and pause this again and again. Right. Yeah. And I was immediately kind of, as you said, because it said 1986, 1987, the whole, any exterior shots did massively remind me of my childhood. Yes. It really captured that in that same way, like we talked about Dracula 1980, 1971 and all of that. This really felt like, that's my childhood, including the woman who's the lead with her massive shoulder pads. At one point, I was like, oh! So I paused that shot because they either shot it in like late autumn, early winter, and absolutely, kind of Proustian rush. And in the background, you can see the Trellick Tower, John.
Can you?
Yes. I was trying to figure out whereabouts it is.
I need to go back and have a look.
Yeah. So it's literally the first shot. Yeah. First shot of the house. If you look in the background, you can see London's Trellick Tower, the famous kind of brutalist block of flats. So I was trying to figure out from the angle, I'm like, is this north-west London or north-east London?
Yeah, because Trellick Tower is not... Where
and
is,
then,
as
Ross
not
says,
from Wembley, is it? I think you can see Wembley from not far away from there, can't you?
It's possible.
Apparently, the American producers wanted to try and make, even though it's obviously shot in England, wanted to make it sound like it was, make it look like it was in America. So
which is one of the things I was going to say.
It's
the dubbing. So weird. It's clearly England, but then there's loads of people who are strangely American. I was like, are they just hanging out like an American expat community? Or what? What's going on?
Well, they make a discussion. They make a point that they moved back from Boston.
Yes.
No,
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
That gets mentioned twice. In the way that, like, now, of course, Brooklyn, it's extremely expensive to live in Brooklyn. They make it out like it was like a nightmare.
From the start, the film has got a really ugly typeface. And it feels like a really cheap American TV movie at that point.
Well, I like the typeface, and I thought the music sounded amazing. I thought the music
actually sounds pretty good, but then as you're going through the cast list, you realise that you haven't heard of anyone at all. Well, the main woman in it was actually one of the Sisterhood of Khan in Doctor Who.
Yes! She's the one who brought Paul McGann into John Hurt. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So she wasn't in Spearhead from Space, was she?
She wasn't in Spearhead from Space. Oh. I don't know if this was shot on 16mm. This film. I mean, Doctor Who Spearhead from Space is the only TV serial so far in Doctor Who that was shot totally in 16mm.
Oh, really interesting.
I'm trying to find this bloody shot, James.
Right, it's literally the first shot so it'll be sort of 3-4 minutes in, John.
Yeah.
This shot is going to have the most discussion over the whole film, isn't it?
Yes, probably, because the rest of it is so badly put together.
It's just before they the couple go into the house.
I'm clicking
There's an establishing shot.
What I'm going to have to do is play it until... Oh, right. Yeah, you're right, James. It is. It is. Well, is it, though? Because...
Oh.
Controversy.
Have you heard of the Balfron Tower?
No.
The Tower cast.
The Balfron Tower.
The brutalist architecture podcast.
So the guy that did the Trellick Tower, I've been to the Trellick Tower on a bit of a pilgrimage, and I bought a vintage radio in a shop that's underneath.
Lovely.
So the Trellick Tower, if I can type it into my phone properly, the guy that designed it was actually called Goldfinger.
Ooh.
Yes.
He's called Erno Goldfinger, but he also did famously the Balfron Tower, which looks exactly like the Trellick Tower, but it's a bit smaller. It's got the separate lift shaft to the side, so that's a bit of a brutalist info dump.
Nice, lovely.
This podcast, but that looks like the Trellick Tower to me, James. Yeah,
okay,
knowing the topography around there.
Yes, yeah.
So they filmed all the interiors of the house in that house, apart from the top floor, because which is I thought was quite interesting. So when they've come back from America, and they move back to the house, and they find that Brother Frank has been staying in there. So they find
he's not
80s
a monk.
squalor is what they find. There's cans of Carling Black Label.
maggots.
Which was maggots.
Yeah. Apparently they had to wait the whole day for the maggots to do what they needed to do.
It's quite weird to look at this part when the rest of the film makes you think that he's this kind of sexual Lothario. That at this point he's living in filth in an empty house, with just a load of porn.
He's just obsessed with wanking, isn't he?
Yeah. It's just nothing is thought through.
So they got all these weird sort of saints and stuff, which they chuck out, and they find his dirty old mattress and his porno mags and his collection of Polaroids. Yeah.
Oh yes.
And a
picture.
little carved model of people having sex, which I saw a very similar one today in Britport, but they wanted too much money for it. So
Britport for you. Yeah.
It might have been haunted.
That's what Beck said. So better not buy it.
Anything like that. Once you've read M.R. James, you leave anything like that.
Any porcelain cocks, leave them where they are.
I was going to say something. Oh, the bit in the Indiana Jones part, he's got absurdly dirty nails.
Yeah.
Nails, yeah. I put down filthy nails and absent.
Like they'd rubbed boot polish under his nails.
Degeneracy.
Basking effect. A-level production design, crap chain place. And then they go into the house and it's like, it's been empty for a while. The dialogue is so clunky.
Yeah.
And then the American guy's like, I've got a terrific job. And it's like...
She goes for the photos and starts and keeps a couple of the porno pictures back for herself.
Yeah, but rips the head off the women, doesn't she? Because she only wants to look at Frank.
Yeah,
the most unsexy Lothario name in the history of film.
And also, more on Frank and his Lothario nature in a bit. But what I also thought was, as she's going through his sordid pictures, my immediate thought was, it's the 80s. Did he take these to Boots?
Exactly.
Of course he did.
Someone must have looked at these.
I said, these aren't Polaroids. These have been processed somewhere.
Yeah. Would this have got like a little sticker on it from Boots?
In the little bit of Boots where it's all dark and black. So it was all a little bit sci-fi.
What Boots was that?
Well, the Boots and Paul Arndale said when you went to go and get your films developed in Boots, it was all like blacked out and dark and kind of like
it's like an NHS drop-in place now, right?
But there's a bit where they're walking through the house, and because I watched a 4K version, I think, or like a maximum res version, the focus pulling on parts of it is horrifically unforgiving, in that the man is totally out of focus and the door behind him is in focus. And there's loads of parts where
I think we've got to forgive it a little bit because it is incredibly low budget. It was like they did it for £1
million.
We'll
talk about that in a bit because I think that's the big thing. Made for £1 million.
It's getting things in focus, which is...
Yes. I was going to say this as well, because, even films like The Babadook was made on like a really low budget. Yeah. And It Follows was made... Yeah, they were made on a low budget, but they had narratives that made sense as well.
And because the director, not just the guy who's written a book and then he's like, I'm going to
do it.
This. I'm not going to get Michael Winner in. I'm going to do this myself.
Because it then suddenly cuts to like the Cenobites, don't they? And they seem to be like reassembling Frank's body in a way.
Yeah.
But there's one bit like where they turn over like a very big jigsaw puzzle, and it's like part of his forehead and his eye.
Eye's still in there, yeah.
And I said, surely the eye would fall out.
Yeah, well, that's
surely.
Yeah. And that was like the beginning of
that is terrible.
Oh, what's that thing I said I watched the other day? That one everyone goes on about.
It's Scream?
No, the British one set in the olden times with the girl with the eyebrows.
The olden times.
Blood on Satan's Claw.
Blood on Satan's Claw.
Yes, it's
right.
very much like Blood on Satan's Claw. But it's also like something that you would have seen in the comic strip with like Rick Mayall and people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like taking the piss out of stuff like that.
But apparently that was meant to be all part of like an elaborate. They did quite a few of these in there. Mount downs where they make some kind of wax and mount it and then reverse the film. And they do this about later on, but apparently it didn't work, so they just left that bit in as it is.
That was a very trendy effect at the time, which is the same year that this came out, I think. It's the way that Kane dies in Doctor Who Dragonfire. And obviously, the first way that someone dies on film like that is the guy at the end.
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, legendary.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, which obviously is done really well.
Yeah.
And then the Kane one is done
this
quite well. What I've just realised, actually, as well, as an aside to this, if this was shot in 1986 and it features the Trellick Tower, there's another very famous British low-budget film that came out in 1986 featuring the Trellick Tower.
With Nail and I.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Slightly better film than this film.
Oh, just a tad.
It's got a script. It's directed. It's got actors in it. It hasn't got like appalling makeup.
Oh, go on.
I think what I think about films like this and then being redone in 4K is that it really shows up the limitations of some of the stuff that was never meant to be rewatched in 4K.
I don't know. So we're gonna skip forward a bit, but the bit where Frank starts being brought back together.
Yeah.
Me and Beck were saying this stuff looks fake, but there's a lot of work. We're saying if you think everything you're seeing on screen now is real, there's something there. I think that a lot of work's gone into that, and I think some of the makeup looks brilliant, especially when Frank's later on, like the skinned version of Frank. I
don't think it looks much better than Dracula decaying at the end of the Dracula films, especially Satanic Rites of Dracula. I think it's meant to be on a projector on a screen, which is very far away from you. And then
now.
I loved it. I love some of the effects in it. I thought they looked great.
Okay, so I think the big thing that I want to flag up from this this early part of the film is that we get the flashback where the wife, where she meets Frank for the first time, and what I've written is erotic / sexually charged denim / bomber jacket / rain matrix. There's a lot going on. He turns up in the rain in a bomber jacket and are you going to ask me in? And what I've written is, if you took the horror out, this is like sub-soap opera level stuff. Who are you? I'm cousin of my brother Frank. I was like, this is really bad. I was just like, this is truly. If you didn't say this was a horror film, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? It's really bad.
That was like the prologue to the Barbara Dixon and isn't he enough? Isn't he fine? Isn't it madness? He can be mine. It's like
from the musical Chess.
Yeah, it's like a prologue to that video. The woman's hair is the same. The lighting is the same. You expect Peter Kay to come in with Susan Boyle and start singing.
But apparently there was a load of sodomy which they cut out. They were cut out. And
that's good, because I think that is disgusting.
We see at one point, doesn't it? I can't remember now. Even like the notes, as usual, have all sort of run into one. But he gets out this recurring theme of his flick knife, doesn't it?
Jesus,
Frank. And what I've written is, I bet he got that on a French exchange trip. That's exactly what kids brought back in this country. He's got a flick knife.
Well, read it up. They said that they had to take out the sodomy, but they was allowed to put the flick knife in. So the flick knife replaces the bum sex.
Sodomy. Fair enough.
I had one once, which was a flick
sex?
knife. No. It was a flick knife, but it had a comb inside.
Yeah.
Oh,
is that for your beard, John?
No, it was.
I think you should get one for your beard.
Yeah, maybe a flick knife comb. Where are we up to? All I've written is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, terrible makeup. The Thing, The Fly. The bit with that transformation scene, or whatever you want to call it. So what happens is that the terrible American father has cut his hand on a nail
Yeah.
whilst moving in, because obviously he has.
Well, they're cutting backwards and forwards of them shoving the sofa, and then him like.
Right, said Fred.
Rotting.
Rotting.
I did expect to see some monkeys carry a piano up the stairs as well.
Arnold Schiffer.
The editing of that part
I had
was so dull. Like, who edited this film? Stevie Wonder.
I had an audio tape, which was the stories of the monkeys out of the PG tips, but it was told by Bernard Cribbins.
Well, Cribbins did the voices.
Yeah, so it was the removal man. What story? The one about the guy, the one on the bike.
Yeah,
and another one. Yeah.
Get in the hang of it. Mind the banisters, son.
Oh, I can't hold it, Dad.
Don't worry, son. I shifted more pianos than you've had hot dinners.
Mr. Shifter, like refreshment.
Oh, thank you most kindly, madam. There's no other tea to beat PG. It's the taste.
Dad, do you know the piano's on my foot?
You hum it, son. I'll play it.
I once spent a day with Bernard Cribbins.
He'd have put his cock in your shoulder, did he?
No, he was a lovely man. It was shooting Doctor Who. I think the episode was Turn Left, and we were on location in the Bay for ages in a charity that I think helped adopted kids, and they were using their offices for Doctor Who. So I met Catherine Tate, who was very, very weird, like a remote control robot who had lost her remote control, who just, when she wasn't in the scene, literally just stood in the corner, like staring into space, like she'd been turned off.
Wow.
But Bernard Cribbins was brilliant and a very nice man. Still alive, of course.
Has he done a horror?
Yeah. Well, he's in Frenzy, which I think we should review as part of our 1972.
Because John hated being in the 80s. We need to get back to 1972, 1971.
Hang on. Let's see how old Bernard Cribbins is.
Is he older than Shatner?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Cribbins. 92.
Yeah,
wow.
He's 2 years older than Shatner then.
Yeah, his career...
Elder statesman in every way.
His career has lasted for over 70 years. 70. Associated Searchers, Jim Dale. Jim Dale, 85.
Not out. Yeah.
85 not out. Wow. TV shows, what a Carry On. Carry On Forever. Pushing Daisies. 6
Carry On
Do you remember?
Forever?
Do you remember when you'd have the TV series of the Carry-Ons, and it would just be scenes from the Carry-Ons?
Yeah.
What was that?
Carry On Laughing, wasn't it?
What? That was crazy.
Or What a Carry On.
What a Carry On. Yeah, I think you're right, Cleves. I'd totally forgotten that. And it would be on for half an hour, wouldn't it? On TV.
Yeah.
We need to do Carry On Screaming.
That's bad, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is really bad. Crying tonight. Where are we with this?
So the blood came. So he's gone upstairs and he's got blood all over the horrible sex.
And then somehow, and once again, this is the part that they just simply do not bother to explain.
Yeah.
The dead brother is somehow resurrected by this.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if there was a scene cut. Now, where they bothered to explain how...
Clive Barker said that in the thing, that he doesn't like explaining stuff.
For fuck's sake.
That is just lazy rubbish, isn't it? That, I mean, the implication is that somehow he's been absorbed into the house in some way, hasn't he? But
yes. But they don't establish this.
No. You don't see where he dies. You don't see... So you think at this point there is some kind of link to Pinhead and the Cenobites being in the house, but there is no explanation at all, is there? What I've written is lack of likeable characters or characters. Because everyone in this is interchangeable, aren't they? They just walk to a point, say a line, and then walk off again.
That's quite a long sequence of him being brought back together. Lots of...
I've written, it's like a Tesco value John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah. Or Brundle.
As he kind of slowly stop motion... reassembles. And I've written stop motion power. And there's also, and once again, one of our motifs for this podcast, there's plenty of rats in this shot, aren't there?
There is, yeah.
We see rats, yeah.
You're a country boy, you know what a rat sounds like. If only there was one memorable line in this whole film. When they zoom in on him and he said, "We will tear your soul apart." And all I've written is bad red dwarf.
And then as he's reassembling himself, we then find out that they're throwing a dinner party.
Yeah.
At this dinner party. yeah. It's really, the dinner party is really weird. And what I've put is that, once again, there's another American and the daughter who's turned up after walking around London's Docklands, which is now the Excel Centre.
To make it longer. Make the film longer, basically.
Yeah, for no real reason. Yeah. Right. He then turns up and makes, I haven't written down what they are, but all I've written is, I would never say some of this stuff in front of a girl's dad. Some of the suggestions he made, I was like, her dad is sat right there.
Yeah.
Don't say it. He's like, how about you come and lie down with me?
I know.
I was like, I wouldn't say that in front of a girl's dad.
The father is a drip, though, isn't he? That's the problem. None of the characters are written. So you just have these kind of shadows of characters that are kind of just floating around doing stuff. And the way that he woos the daughter is by putting a fag in and out of his mouth with his tongue.
Yeah.
Which is...
how alluring.
Oh, those British guys who can...
With American accents.
But they've all been redubbed to sound American. Yeah. And it's like...
Weird.
It's like some kind of weird American ghetto in West London.
London is bizarre.
Or something.
And then...
so weird.
After that, we get that Frank, in inverted commas, then appears before.
Yeah.
What's her name, Ross? What is the name of it?
Peggy? No, I got
Jilly.
No,
whoever. IMDb to the rescue.
Yeah. Do Margot? No.
Susan?
No.
I thought it was Susan. No one's called Susan.
Julia.
Okay.
Oh, Julia.
So,
yes, I was.
Julia.
So we get to the bit where Frank reveals himself to Julia, and then the best bit is
he goes, good, is he?
He goes, "It's really me." But I found that hilarious because two things. Number one, he sounds totally different. And number two, it's a totally different actor. So it's not really him at all in any way, shape or form.
Is it really a different actor?
Yeah. So
yes.
Frank is
Jesus
because
Christ.
they needed really skinny people to wear the prosthetic
flesh suit.
Yeah. So it's only ever that actor when you see him as Frank. The rest of the time, it's someone else inside a suit
with a different voice.
And they have a 10-year-old. When he's dragging himself along the floor, there's a 10-year-old dressed up in a little suit.
I did think at that point that looked very, very obviously not real. That it just looked like a midget in a suit.
12-year-old B thought, turn this off. This is too fucking scary.
That was the point.
Yeah.
Ross got no further.
Yeah.
I noticed
and
as well.
pretty much me with this review, actually.
Yeah, it was strange that she didn't scream the place down when she saw him. She's just like, oh. Whereas any other horror film, people are screaming at the drop of the hat. Stuff happened to the women in this film, and all they do is just wince.
At no point does she say, "How the fuck has this happened?
Yeah.
How have you resurrected yourself from the dead?" She's like, "Okay, so you're alive now. Yeah, fine."
This is all because he gave us such a good orgasm. She's prepared to do anything for him. Anything.
It's just like schoolboy writing. It's like
it is. It really is.
Yeah, this is someone who's never had sex. Thinking sex must be so amazing that you'd be prepared to kill multiple people just to have sex.
Well, at this point, you've got a scene where she's basically chatting to Frank, who just looks like loads of salami or something stuck together. And he's like, "You would do anything." She's like, "Yes, I'll do anything. I need more blood." And it's just like, oh God, of course he fucking does. But it's like, why is she turned into a killer? All of a sudden, this normal woman goes to a bar, pulls this guy, brings him back, and then smashes his head in with a hammer. And she's covered in blood, and she looks really, sexually aroused or whatever. But there's no sense of it being a kind of empowerment thing, which would have made it interesting. All along, I think she's just played as the victim of this abusive guy which makes it really, really boring for me, because he's just like an abusive guy in any other film. He just happens to be a reincarnated corpse who's come out of some floorboards.
Yeah, and we've got to remember at this point, the Cenobites have been in it for about a minute.
3 seconds.
Well, you haven't seen at the point that I stopped watching, you hadn't seen the villains in inverted commas. I had no idea what I was watching. Which, when you look at it that way, it does kind of make you think of some of the other films we've watched. You know, the Hammer films where Christopher Lee doesn't turn up until an hour into the film. He says one line and then he disappears again. But I think the trouble with this film for me is there's no likable characters. There's no kind of familiarity to it at all. There's no kind of feel of like nostalgia or anything. It's just like a really bad film.
So I think you've revealed now to the
what have I revealed?
That you didn't get to finish watching this film, John. So at what point did you stop watching it?
Well, I made the executive decision not to waste another 45 minutes of my life, which is the same decision I made when I went to see Suicide Squad in Mount Gary Cinema, where I got 10 minutes into that and walked out because I was the only person in the cinema. And I just thought it was the most risible load of rubbish. And I just thought this has nothing. I don't know. Watching the film, I didn't know who I was. Who am I rooting for? Out of all these characters that are introduced, who am I rooting for? Am I rooting for Frank, that he's going to get his body back? Am I rooting for Julia, who's just like...
What's the fuck?
Basically this woman who is just like downtrodden by a reanimated corpse. There's the teenage daughter who does nothing and can't even turn a tap on.
It's barely in it. It's barely in it until the last third of the film.
And then I've looked at I skipped through the end of the film, and she's kind of the heroine at the end.
Yeah.
It's like for 2/3 of the film, you're watching a film where you're not really, the trope with a lot of the films we've watched is that you follow the characters through the film. You identify with a character, and you follow their story. And this is what they always say about the companions in Doctor Who, that the companion is the audience and they translate what's happening in the story to the audience or the children watching through questioning the Doctor. But in this story, you're not following anyone because it's just a story about loads of people that you wouldn't want to know or go for a pint with, or it's even
like listen to this podcast.
So yeah, at that point, I think I got to Frank just a tosser. Then the daughter is working in a pet shop. So it's like, if this guy has got such a great job and they've just moved from Brooklyn, why does his daughter have to work in a pet shop?
Yeah.
But she says, I don't want to move in here right now. It's something else. I can't explain it, but I've got something else going on, which was always like really vague.
Pet shop, so this again reminded me of Rocky with
But
the pet shop bit, it's very strange. So you got the tramp in there. So this is the second time you see that tramp.
Well, you've got
who is Clive Barker?
Line.
Well, is it?
It's Clive Barker. Yeah,
it is Clive Barker playing Clive Barker, is it?
Well, the cast list
thought that it
is
a bit like Paul Kay when he played. Did he play like a homeless man at one point?
I thought it looked like the man from Deathline.
Well, that's what I just said. Yeah, it's the guy from Deathline. He's been resurrected.
Mind the doors.
The derelict is played by Frank Baker. Clive Barker. Frank Baker, Clive Barker. Is what I think.
Yeah, so we see him eating locusts.
Like, ooh, who is this creepy guy?
He's the author. Another perv like James Herbert.
Oh, they did appear together on Wogan, didn't they?
On Wogan, as we've discussed.
Is that the guy that's on Wogan?
Yeah.
Yes!
Oh, well, he's an absolute creep, isn't he?
Julia continues on with her murderous spree. And this thing, at the heart of it, forget all the Cenobites and all that bullshit. Really, the thing is this, is like, it's a classic horror trope of woman in love with man is willing to murder to get him back. That's it. That's the horror of the thing, is that, as John says, she suddenly turns into this murderer in order to help, like, put him back together.
Out of nowhere.
I like the way that it wasn't glamorous at all. When they got the guy drunk, he came back, he stumbled to get his trousers off, he's standing there in his pants.
It featured the really weird, she takes him up to the weird kind of barren room, and he goes, well, what's all this about then? And she goes, well, I've always preferred it on the floor.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
I said to Beck, like, there's probably about 4 points before this where I've gone, nah, I'm out of this. Like, first
You reckon?
This house looks a bit shitty. Come up to the shitty the blood-soaked what do you call it?
That would not put you off.
Rats in the attic.
Okay, that might. One of the amazing things that you missed, John, is as so she continues to murder, carries on this murderous sort of hammer killing spree that's feeding him blood, and slowly he comes back together, and then amazingly in one shot, even though he hasn't got any skin yet, he starts wearing clothes, and he's just in a pair of slacks. And I thought, I'm alive! Get me some slacks immediately!
Yeah, and he starts
like
smoking. And Clive Barker said, this is the first time you see a man without skin smoking a cigarette on film.
Wow.
I waited a long time to see that. So I'm skipping through it now, looking at it. So is there a part where basically he takes over the body of the husband?
Yes.
So the guy that actually plays Frank at the start, who's got this, incredible magnetism with this
sexual charisma.
Yeah. She actually doesn't see him fully formed as Frank again. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Wow.
He tries to kill the daughter. And she manages to get the puzzle box off him, throws it out the window of the house, runs outside the house, picks it up and runs for it. She then wakes up in a...
Wait, Ross. Before you get to that bit, there's a mad bit where she's like running around the streets of North London and she just runs past a couple of nuns. And I've just put, why not, eh? Why not? Just have a couple of nuns there. When was the last time any of us saw... Yeah, exactly. When did you ever see nuns walking about, even in the 80s?
There's a convent near me. I see nuns quite regularly.
Oh, wow.
I haven't seen a nun for a long time.
They all look like Nepalese or something.
I was about to say Rome was the only time I ever saw nuns walking about anywhere. That's true. Loads.
Well, Catholicism is quite big in Rome.
Right. So, as Ross says, she ends up in hospital. She collapses, wakes up in hospital, and Ross carries on.
The daughter?
Yeah, the daughter. Yeah. Then she starts fiddling with the puzzle box again, and a sort of doorway. The walls open up, and there's a doorway and a corridor. She goes down there, and this massive kind of like worm monster thing, which is obviously a big sort of thing on a trolley, because you can see the wheels at the back where they're pushing it along, and then someone's standing in the tail.
It's known as, I had a look as well, as the engineer. Although he clearly doesn't seem to be engineering anything. There's no engineering going on.
Not Thomas Telford. He's not Bruno.
So he chases her out of the and then she runs back to the house. And that when she gets back to the house, this is when Frank has now taken over the body of the father.
Oh, hold on. Before you get there, Ross, there's an amazing bit where she then encounters the Cenobites, and we get this whole...
yes.
We are in between, basically we're into S&M, is the upshot of it all, right? And then he's like, now we are going to take your soul, right? And then she goes, wait! And he goes, no time for arguments. And then she goes, hold on, but what if I get you Frank back? And he goes... Whoa, well, okay then. Wait a minute. There was time for argument.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. This is pointless bit of dialogue. They weren't willing to listen.
The Cenobites you see, there's one which got like chattering teeth. There's a big fat one called Butterball.
Fat like.
Because all goths are fat in some way. Some part of every goth is fat. And I'm unanimous.
And the female one, who's Clive Barker's cousin or something. Apparently, the main Cenobite was meant to be the big fat one.
Yeah, but they couldn't get the talk.
They couldn't get in the talk, so they gave all his lines to Pinhead.
You're a joke. No, they couldn't get the actor playing.
No, because of the costume.
Oh, right. Because he was so fat he couldn't talk.
Yeah. But I loved his little Matrix sunglasses he had on.
Oh, God, it's awful.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but he looked like the interior designer from Beetlejuice, didn't he?
He did, right? So yes, you're right. So after she kind of negotiates with the Cenobites and says, well, don't worry, I can help you get Frank back. Even though they go, no one escapes from us. Although he clearly has escaped from them. I'm like, you guys are fucking awful, right? And I've just written, you might notice it just says, "This is fucking awful," and I've underlined the word "awful" twice. But just at that point in the evening, I was like,
awful.
I think we should refer
That's
to
on
the Cenobites as the cult of Gash from now on, shouldn't we?
The cult of Gash, unbelievable. Right, so she goes back to the house. She goes back to the house to the denouement, and then what we get is the amazing
going back to the house.
But she's got to give the Cenobites Frank in order to stop them taking her soul.
Oh, we see.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And to start off with, she is not aware that Frank has taken over the dad and nicked his skin.
Yeah.
So that the skinned corpse of her dad, they're like, no, don't worry, Frank's dead. Look, there he is. He's dead.
And then the Cenobites turn up and said, we want them, and they showed like the flayed body on the floor. And she thinks that's Frank. Yeah. So the Cenobites said, we want the man who did this. And she thinks that they're trying to get her dad. So there's a big sort of kerfuffle around that.
Like Face Off with Travolta and Cage.
Yeah, exactly that.
Precursor.
And then we get an amazing line where she then goes to talk to the dad in inverted commas, who's Frank, and he goes, "Don't worry. When all this is done, I'll go to the police and I'll go and try and make them understand, or I'll make them understand." I was like, I'd love to see that conversation. Right. Now, as you can see, there's a skinned person upstairs. Yeah. I know this looks bad. That's going to be up there with like the Dennis Nielsen interviews. Like, so I killed them. I killed them.
It's not KFC.
Is the wife dead at this point?
No, not yet.
No, she's still going.
All right. Because is she in the sequels?
Yes.
So how did she come back in the sequels?
I don't think I've seen it, but I think there's something about the blood on a mattress.
Oh, fuck.
In a mental asylum or something.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. And it sounds like an episode of Ghost Adventures more than a bloody feature.
And then she then kind of figures out, doesn't she, that it's kind of not her dad. Yeah. And then there's a chase. And then there's a ridiculous bit where she then goes and hides from him. And is next to the corpses of the guys that she's murdered in a kind of the horror.
And then falls over and all the maggots fall out of its mouth onto her.
Yeah, more maggots. And so after doing such, incredible job of hiding, she then gives away her position by just going out onto the landing and crying.
Yeah.
Because the maggots
that's the worst hiding job I've ever seen in my life. She should have been in Deathline. Gone in a bloody room with like 50 corpses in there, stinking the place up. I have to say that the production design in a film made 15 years before this was far superior to the production design in any of this film. It's a film shot in an empty house. Like, how hard can it be? But they still managed to make it look terrible.
I can't remember how it ends now, James. What happens next?
Right, okay. Well. Right, so first of all, you'll have to remind me why, but one of my notes I've just written is, woodwork. No. I think someone gets hit by some woodwork. Oh, no, what it is? Yeah, that's it. Right, okay. What happens is, she kind of like the Cenobites are there. I can't remember. I think she possibly opens the box or something, but it's possible. And they're like, "Ha, we got you, Frank. Got you now."
And then they kind of ripped apart.
Yeah. It gets ripped apart. But then one of the things that rips them apart is like a big spinning bit of GCSE woodwork. It's just like a big wooden box. Go on.
So he gets loads and loads of hooks into him, and his face is all pulled apart. And his last line is, before he gets ripped to pieces, is "Jesus wept," which is apparently was an ad-lib line by the actor, because the final line was supposed to be "fuck you," but he
genius, Shakespearean.
So you think at that point they've given Frank back to the Cenobites,
and also Ross, we should point out that now there's famous. This is a momentary aside, but it is going somewhere. Like, there's an amazing bit in there's a Daredevil comic from the early 90s. Right, I know Ross has certainly read it, done by the great Ann Nocenti, who did that. And there's a bit where it's basically Daredevil is in hell with the Marvel, Mephisto, who's basically the devil in and Blackheart, who's basically the devil in Marvel Comics. And the Silver Surfer is going to fight him, and he turns to Daredevil and he says, What is about to go down is not for a mortal man to see. So I'm going to transport you out of here. Or and they're true to their word, you don't see what happens. It's like, it's so mind-boggling. You couldn't get your head around it. So away you go. Now, they played the same card in this, in that they couldn't afford it. The Cenobites go, this is not for you to see. But they then promptly show her.
All right.
So again, another pointless line of dialogue. We're like, this isn't for your eyes, but you might as well watch it anyway.
If you got nothing
pointless.
better to do.
And then, like, one at a time, each of the Cenobites arrive, featuring one of them. I think it might be the one with the chattering teeth or the fat one. I can't remember. One of them's covered in some gauze.
Oh, I can't remember.
And just like appears through some gauze. And I've just put, where on earth does that gauze come from? Do they just come with their own like sheet of gauze?
I can't remember.
I'm looking at. Oh yes, I found that part. I don't know why. This appears to be a female one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is she the chattering teeth one?
No, the chattering teeth one is just teeth.
She's behind. She looks a bit like a nun behind the girl in the rain now. And she looks scared, the girl, and then the gauze is lifted.
Audio description.
Where's that gauze come from?
There's no explanation for the gauze. No. And then this is like Snake Face Man. He's got no eyes. Yeah. And then she pushes the plunger down on the box, and then some electricity comes out. And Snake Face Man disappears. And then the Sontaran man turns up, takes his glasses off, and he stabs the boyfriend. Oh, no, he doesn't. And a beam falls on him.
What's amazing is, number one, is that I felt that the lightning effects coming out of that box just totally reminded me of any time an immortal got killed in Highlander.
Yes.
It's exactly the same era. That effect was very popular.
Within about 3 years, this would all be done on CGI and it would all look about 50 times better.
And the best bit is like Steve, the boyfriend, turns up. And Steve's like, so Steve turns up into this kind of like, what the fuck? What's all this? And then he has a go at trying to close the box. It's like, for Christ's sake, Steve. Leave it alone, man. Steve. You're in over your head, Steve.
So what I'm looking at the moment is that a monster that looks like a big maggot with a face is swinging about. Right. So he's swinging around in a doorway. Steve is
What's the engineering?
Steve has just tried to hit him with a milk bottle. So that's the tie-in to the Living Daylights. And then the girl is hitting. So this creature here reminds me a bit of the shark in Jaws, in that it's totally immobile in the water and just looks like a big lump of rubber with someone inside it, flapping around, basically. Yes,
doing that. Yeah.
And what happens then?
I don't know. You have to tell me.
James is doing it now.
Yeah.
It's basically someone in the water going, "Oh, succour! Oh, succour!"
Long story short, she manages to close the box, thus trapping them all back in there or whatever, or sending them off. They then run out of the house, and it goes very 1980s pop video, doesn't it?
Yeah. Lights. And the house burns down.
Well, it burns down in inverted commas. I've written they clearly couldn't afford to blow it up. So it just kind of, they kind of go, oh.
And then the tramp turns up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Turns into a massive skeleton.
Wait, Ross. Dragon. Wait. First of all, she then goes, the house, which we don't see blow up. They're just clearly on a different set, which is just like rubble and burning bits of rubble. And instead of going, well, this box has caused nothing, I'm going to basically bury this in a concrete box somewhere and make it so that no one, or I'm going to try and blow it up maybe. She just kind of throws it half-heartedly into one of like the blazes. And leaves it. And then the tramp turns up.
In the Docklands somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah. Walks into the fire, thus setting himself ablaze, grabs it, and then I've written, this film cost me £2.50. I think that's more than the special effects cost. The tramp then bizarrely turns into some kind of demon? Dragon demon?
Skeleton.
Dragon skeleton?
Flies off.
And then flies off.
Yeah, and then he takes it back to the Chinese man at the beginning, and he sounds.
He's got another person going, "Oh, what's your pleasure?"
And the story begins
again.
Yeah,
mad.
I'm watching that scene now. You can almost see someone look really bored and cold at the side of the camera, pressing the button on the smoke machine.
Mm.
Yeah, he's reached into the fire. Quite clumsily, catching himself on fire.
Yeah.
And now it just looks the effects for this are awful, aren't they?
They are. Like I said,
and now it's cross-faded into a dragon.
Yeah.
It's got a golden child skeleton. And then the camera is on some kind of dolly, so it flies off.
Yeah.
And then an image of them is transported into the box. And then basically you're back at the beginning of the film.
Yes.
And it's just like that ending. It's just like what happened? Where did this come from? What?
And how is she going to explain this to anyone? What's happened to your parents or your dad and his wife? Well, you know.
Yeah, I think they're trying to be profound with the ending, aren't they? Like the story
full circles. Yeah. Well, in some ways it doesn't, because as I said, they made about 3,000 fucking sequels.
Another 9 sequels. How can you carry on a story which has no material whatsoever for another 9?
But it's really interesting. I think that that film was not about the Cenobites, but that's what
caught people's imagination.
Yeah. This whole Pinhead thing, he became like this. This is the origin of him. He's a First World War soldier and all this kind of stuff.
Really?
In later films.
Oh, right.
So I think the verdicts are John couldn't be bothered to watch all of it, so therefore he didn't like it. James, would you recommend this?
Oh Christ, no.
No.
Absolutely not. Like you, Ross, for me, it was something that when I was kind of 10, 11, 12, if I was going to get a rent of VHS, and if I was going to get an 18, if I was going to convict, my parents are pretty liberal and would have let me watch this, but it would have had to be, it's like, you're only going to get one shot. So if it's an 18, make sure it's a good 18. Don't waste your 18. And because I'm not the biggest horror fan in the world, and I would have like you, Ross, I just looked at it and just thought, I'm not sure that I'm going to I'd much rather watch RoboCop, or I'd much rather watch Predator, quite frankly. That appealed way more than this.
Predator's
and then
superior film.
And I think I've maybe seen 15 minutes of Hellraiser 3 at some point, and just thought, I've got no idea what's going on here. You probably needed to watch the first 2. But now, having gone back and watched this, I do get that it's like, okay, made for £1 million, and made how much? 20 million did it make?
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. Okay, fair enough. And, that is how Hollywood works. And that's, you make cheap and you make horror films, you make romantic comedies cheaply. So respect to them for that, for doing all that. But by God, it is not aged well.
It's interesting he didn't get to direct any of the others.
Others?
No. It's aged very badly. I think it's so bad that I'm officially not going to give it a mark. This is no mark.
None. Yeah.
I'm not even going to record
ungraded
a mark for this.
Ungraded. And NA.
Ungraded.
Wow.
Ungradable.
So Ross is going to give it a 3.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I enjoyed it. And I'm going to watch all of the sequels.
What can you enjoy? Badly scripted, badly filmed, badly edited, badly acted, badly special effects.
I like the special effect.
Ross, will you literally watch anything?
No.
Do you watch the test card?
I don't know. It had a sort of a sleazy, and I think James is right. It made me think of it made me think of being a child and being a little bit frightened of this kind of stuff, and there being like some kind of like horrible underbelly of the world, which I was a bit scared of. Yeah.
So it's a nostalgic charm, but it's not necessarily the thing itself that you're. So it's what it makes you think of. Yeah. It's not the actual thing.
And I think, and like a lot of the things I like, I feel like there's a really good version of this which they haven't made.
Yeah.
If I feel like if we got to remake this, I'd probably
they are doing.
Yeah,
apparently, according to you.
I hope there's some actors and
but apparently
actors these days. You don't say actresses anymore. I hope there's some people in it we've actually heard of this time.
But apparently they wanted to push. So they were going to remake this, but they was trying to make it for like a PG-13 sort of audience. Trying to make it, and they wanted it to be a bit more funny. And the Clive Barker and all that, I was just saying that we can't. It shouldn't be like that, and I agree. I feel like a remake of this should be almost like unwatchable because it's so disgusting. That's how I would make it. What could you do with sex and taboo sort of behaviours and obsession now, which would be something which people would go, I've never seen anything like that before.
I don't think you could. I don't think it's watchable or makeable, is it? There's a way you'd have to spin it on its head where you didn't see anything.
Yeah. Anyway, but I feel like I like the idea of it, and I am intrigued by the order of the gash.
So James gave it a 1. I gave it ungraded, and you gave it 3. Please.
3, yeah.
Fuck.
Yikes.
So what's that? What is that higher than?
For me?
Yeah. Or yeah. So is that higher than Deathline?
Probably. Let's have a
look.
look.
My God.
Let's have a look.
This is like what I'm fascinated by the way that other people perceive the world.
Yeah.
And this has got a lot to do with that.
That's what makes you an artist, John.
It's impossible to measure this as being a more enjoyable or better film in any way than Deathline.
It got more than Dracula AD 1972, Curse of Frankenstein stuff. No. Satanic Rites of Dracula.
Deathline. Because you hated that. And Satanic Rites of Dracula is a far better film.
Deathline.
Agreed.
Got 1.
Oh my God!
Dr. Fives got a 0.5.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Fives is rubbish, but I enjoyed that more than this.
Yeah, the only things that got higher than this for me were Sapphire and Steel, The Rats, and Never Trust a Rabbit,
and Stone Tape.
Probably Stone Tape.
You really like
Stone Tape's my highest scoring one so far.
Yeah, country lad, you know what a rat sounds like.
So, has anyone got anything horrific they want to share?
Well, I have.
No, hit it. So, something horrific, something we recommend to each other, which we've seen, read, or listened to since we last convened.
Well, I thought outside the box for this because I just haven't had time or chance or anything recently to do anything other than other stuff. But I've been listening, while I've been working, I've been listening to the back catalogue of PJ Harvey.
Ah, yes.
Oh.
And I think that there's a very good case for a kind of PhD or whatever people do these days. A thesis written about how PJ Harvey's work fits within the pantheon of British horror. And I really think there's a very good case for that. Her work is terrifying. And maybe I just need to stop there. I was just thinking, what you think of what you think of as British horror and what you think of that as being in a modern context is probably quite hard to pinpoint, especially in terms of music. I don't think you could say often that music is horrifying, but the stories and stuff within her songs are absolutely nuts, and the earlier stuff. A lot of it is kind of Americana influenced, and there's a big Americana feel to it. But also the way she sings, obviously, that her Dorset accent is quite weird, quite interesting. And I just think there's a really good case to say that, her body of work is like an M.R. James or a Hammer Films or something else.
That's a good point.
British pantheon of horror.
I've only listened to one of her albums, so I'm going to go back and listen to the rest.
Start from the start.
Yeah.
And just go through them one at a time, and they're just they're terrifying. Actually,
I would say that Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea is one of my favourite albums.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is, it's a superb album.
That's probably the most accessible one.
Yes,
and the least terrifying. The first 3 or 4 are really just like screaming and kind of mad. Just mad, incoherent kind of murder.
She evokes Sheen and a gig. That's obviously something that's used in a horror context and things such as that. But it's a discussion for another day, maybe. Good point, John.
Because I never have a chance to read anything or watch anything, so I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I haven't seen.
Unless it's a 2-hour Ghost Adventure special that we watched last night at about 1:00 in the morning, where I can't remember off the top of my head now what was happening, but it was absolutely enthralling, wasn't it, George?
It was.
Yeah.
I can't remember either.
It was so good that neither of us can remember, but it was very good, and it was 2 hours long.
Maybe you were possessed for the whole time.
Either of you got anything?
No, I haven't got anything to say. I will try and have something for the next time we do this.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I've got two things.
Ooh, lovely.
Brilliant New Zealand horror film called Housebound, horror comedy. It's about a girl who is involved in a botched robbery, and then she gets a one of those things on her leg, so she's not allowed to leave. So she has to go back and live with her parents. She's not allowed to leave the house.
What do you mean, one of those things on her leg?
A tag.
A tick.
No, what they called a tag.
Yeah.
Like Asbos have.
Jesus Christ.
And then, and it's just like, it's like, is the house haunted? It's, I can't say too much about it because it goes through like 3 or 4 different things when you think something's happening and then it's something else. And it's loads of really good ideas. But also really, really funny. So it's not often you get.
And it's a horror, funny horror.
Yeah, called Housebound. It's a New Zealand one, really good. And also, I would just say I watched Blood on Satan's Claw, which was something which I thought we would do as an episode, but I don't think we should because I agree with you, John. I don't think it was great.
It's not a great film.
However, there's one of our followers on Twitter has written a really good book about it, and I've read his article on the Horrified website, and it's made it a lot better for me after reading his article, which is obviously a slimmer version of his book on it, because it was meant to be a portmanteau with 3 different stories, but then somehow they decided to put them all into one story, and
right.
And it's weird how like different characters sort of disappear. Like the woman who's goes insane, she just disappears, and that's it. That's the end of that story, and it goes into another one, and it's all a little bit disjointed. It was weird seeing Betty. I thought some of us do have them, and
Michelle Detrice,
Zoe from Doctor Who,
and Zoe from Doctor Who being raped by a load of children, which is very strange. Hopefully, we're going to record another episode pretty soon for you, so there won't be a big delay.
Indeed.
And the next time on General Witchfinders, we will be going backwards in time from the 1970s into the 1940s to watch Dead of Night.
Wow.
Oh,
cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that's what we've got coming up next.
Oh, we're actually going to watch a good film.
But until next time, so that's available to buy, I think. But it's only on Amazon for a couple of quid. So
okay, cool.
Get on with that.
Bloody marvellous film.
Okay, so until next time.
Okay, everyone.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Take care. Speak to you soon.
Or live long and prosper.
Oh, he's changing. He's mixing it up.
What do I usually say?
Love light, and peace.
Yeah.
Love light and peace.
Peace.
Not love life and peace.
Happy day.
Happy day.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to The General Witchfinders. Support the show and continue the conversation at patreon.com/General Witchfinders. Subscribe and spread the word at generalwitchfinders.com. Farewell, and don't have nightmares.
Hell's brought me some more fizz. We went to a lovely vineyard today to see.
Hi, House. Hiya.
To see Lee and Karis for the first time in ages.
Lovely.
And we had some
Nice.
rosé. They do their own rosé fizz there.
Ooh,
which is really
delicious.
It looks the colour of Tizer, but it is actually really nice.
Beautiful.
Fantastic.
I'm having my skinny beer.
Oh, what's that?
That's what we discussed it last time.
Did we?
Go back and listen to episode.
What's skinny about it? Is it low fat? Or
It's
is that just
gluten free wheat-free.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Anyway, all that.
What the hell's it made of?
We had this discussion before.
Did we?
Yeah, we've gone through all of this.
Jesus,
Yeah.
I don't remember.